WhatsApp, a chat application responsible for facilitating millions of aunties gossiping in a consistent, real-time, and alleged encrypted fashion. That's what we're going to be building today. Today, we're going to build a simple WhatsApp clone using the latest and greatest technologies. And I'm talking NextJS, and I'm talking Clerk for authentication, and I'm also talking using Convex as our backend, which is also the sponsor of today's video. Now, real quick, let me explain to you why building with Convex just makes sense. If you've seen my previous video, you already know, but if you haven't, Convex does your database management, your WebSocket connection, your data management, type-safe database interactions, real-time synchronization, serverless backend management, automated scaling. But for those who don't know what those big nerd-dizzle terms mean, basically, with Convex, you don't need a DB provider, you don't need TanStack query, you don't need an ORM, and you don't need Socket.io. Convex handles everything beautifully. And if you're used to using these tools like TanStack query, a DB provider, writing out your schema, using an ORM, using Socket.io, Convex makes it so simple, it feels illegal. It's truly a great product. I'm so excited to be building this with you. Going over what we're building, I'm going to show you a quick demo. So this is going to be our simple landing page. Welcome to not WhatsApp. It's like WhatsApp, but not. But we're going to click on start chatting. Then we're going to be asked to authenticate. We're going to continue signing in. And once I'm signed in, if you refresh, you're going to see that beautiful WhatsApp loading screen. We actually don't need this because a lot of the data is fetched server side. So the second you're on the page, all the data is there, but we want to make it look like WhatsApp, right? So that's why I added that loading animation, matching the WhatsApp colors, look and feel. Now you can click on the start new chat button and I can search for somebody here and I can click on someone's name and chat with them. I can click on a specific chat. It takes me automatically to the very last message. I can also send images. Let me send a quick meme right here. And as the image is uploading, by the way, Convex handles the image uploading and it's so simple to write these functions. I'm going to hit send, and then if I go to another browser tab, I see that the image pops up instantaneously. And just to show you how fast Convex is and how real-time this chat app is, I'm just going to show you right now. Look at that. Literally instantaneous, and this is all because of Convex. If we were to build this without Convex, it'd be a lot of code, but Convex makes it very simple and very easy to build applications like this. Crack your fingers, get you a glass of water, prep your computer, make sure it's charged. We're about to build this together. I hope you're as excited as I am. Let's get started. All right, let's get started. First things first, we have to initialize our NextJS project. So that's what I'm going to do in my terminal here. I'm going to copy the npx create next app at latest. We're going to call this WhatsApp tutorial. We're going to say yes to TypeScript, yes to ESLint, yes to Tailwind, no to source directory, yes to app router, yes to TurboPack, no here. And we're going to let this run. Couple things that we're going to need to set up our Convex account. So make sure to click the link in the description, create your account. And then what I want us to do is I want us to go to database queries and then click on quick start and go to NextJS. This is where we'll be setting up our Convex project. And for Clerk, you're going to create a Clerk account and meet me here at this page. I just named my project not WhatsApp tutorial. And this is all the stuff we need to set up. But in terms of UI, we're going to use our trusted ShadCN UI library, and we're going to set that up right now. So you go to the docs, installation, NextJS, and we're going to run this command right here, npx ShadCN at latest init -d. It adds some defaults that are pretty nice in my opinion. So this is what I'm going to copy, and then we're going to go to the terminal. We're going to cd into our project, cd WhatsApp tutorial. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do code and then period. This opens up our project in VS Code, which is fantastic. And let's start off by installing and setting up ShadCN UI. We're going to use force. That's perfect. All right, ShadCN is set up. Just to make sure this works, we're going to add the button component. So let's do npx ShadCN add latest add button. And we're going to use force. And then we're going to see a components folder, UI, and under UI button.tsx, ShadCN is set up. Now let's set up Convex. In order for us to set up Convex, we're going to need to install Convex. So I'm going to go back to my terminal, bun install Convex. Oops, I did install twice. My apologies. Bun install Convex. That's done. And then we're going to run the Convex dev deployment. So we're going to split the terminal. and we're going to copy npx convex dev, right? This split terminal, this is where we'll see our Convex backend as a service at work, and this is where we will be building out our NextJS application. So we hit enter here. It's going to ask us to create a new project. We'll call it WhatsApp tutorial. It will be creating that, and you're going to notice a Convex folder pop up with a generated folder, a README, and a tsconfig, and that means you've done it correctly. So there's some things here it tells us to do, but we're just going to jump and we're going to add this Convex client provider. So I'm going to copy this code, go into components, and I like to do it this way. I'll create a providers folder, and we're going to do convex-provider.tsx, paste that here. And then in my layout file, I'm going to wrap my children with the Convex, and I make sure you import the right one, Convex client provider, the one I just copy pasted. We're going to wrap our children, and this makes it so that Convex is set up properly. And then after that, it's just how to use Convex, but we'll get into that shortly. And now let's set up our authentication. So I'm going to install Clerk Next.js. So let's do bun install Clerk Next.js. Perfect. That is set up. And then what we're going to do is copy our environment variables. Let's go to .env.local and paste our Clerk environment variables here. Perfect. And then it wants us to create a middleware file with some code. We're going to copy this code, and we're going to, in the root of the project, create middleware.ts. Paste this here. That is perfect. And then it wants us to wrap our entire application with Clerk provider. So we're going to go back to our layout.tsx right here, and we're going to wrap the entire app with a Clerk provider. And one thing that with Next 15 that you're going to have to do once you've imported this, you're going to add dynamic here. Once you've done that, you're going to click on continue to the Next.js guide because we're not done yet. We're going to need to create our sign up and our sign in routes. And these are pretty simple, and this is why I love Clerk so much. I'm just going to copy this path right here, sign up / then this sign up, then page.tsx. I'm just going to copy this here. I'm going to show you a neat trick. And under app, I'm going to create a new file, paste that. What it's going to do is it's going to create the sign up folder, create this folder, and because there's a .tsx here, this knows that this is supposed to be a file and the rest are folders. So if I hit enter, you're going to see folder, file, which is exactly what I wanted. I'm going to copy the code here and paste it here. So we have our sign up page set up, and we're going to do the same thing for sign in. Under the app folder, create a new file, paste that, perfect. And then we're going to copy this code right here. So now I have my sign in and my sign up page set up. And then what it's telling me is I need to add some code to my middleware. And I'm going to explain a little bit about how this code works. So we're going to paste this code, and this middleware, basically what it does is it checks if there are any public routes that we've set, meaning these routes /sign in /sign up, if they are in this array, pass through this create route matcher. Essentially what happens is these have been made public routes, meaning anyone who's not authenticated can have access to this site. But any other route, if you are not signed in, then you won't be able to access it. And I'll show you an example. We're just going to do bun install, make sure everything's installed, and let's do bun run dev. So I'm going to go to my localhost 3000, and you're going to notice right off the bat, it took me to the sign in page. And that's because my home page is not a public route. But if I made my / a public route and I went to localhost 3000 again, you're going to see that it takes me to my main page. But let's say I wanted to go to /dashboard, if I can type correctly. Let's say I wanted to go to /dashboard and I type dashboard here. Notice how it takes me to a sign-in page, but it doesn't take me to /sign-in. It takes me to some hosted page /sign-in, and I don't want that. So let's keep going with the instructions. It tells us here to add 2 environment variables, and basically what these environment variables do is so that we don't see those hosted sign-in, sign-up pages. So if we do this all again, we hit back, and then we try to go to /dashboard, we're going to be taken to the sign-in page under our local host, which is what we want. And that is pretty much it. We are set up in terms of authentication. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test logging in with my Google account. So let's click here. So it just signed me in with my Google account. And notice I'm on the slash dashboard page. Obviously gave me a 404 because this page cannot be found. But the reason I'm on this page is because I have been authenticated. And to just remove my authentication, I don't have a sign up functionality yet. I'm just going to refresh, remove cookies, and then it signs me out, which is perfect. Our clerk is set up properly. But now there is something that we need to set up. If I go back to my clerk dashboard and I click on users, this is an account I just signed up with, right? Michael Schmelis is my name. This is my email. But all this information about me is stored on clerk. There's no way for me to pull this information from a database because I haven't stored this in a database. And this is where clerk and Convex come together. I want to store my user information in my Convex tables, in my Convex DB. So that's what we're going to set up right now. In order for this to set up, there's some high-level things I want to explain. So let's say we have a user, and this user wants to sign up on our site. And we know our site is built using NextJS, and we have Convex as our backend, as our trusted backend as a service. So we're going to say backend as a service. And we're using clerk for authentication, right? So this is what we want to happen. When this user comes to sign up, they're going to sign up using clerk. Clerk is going to generate them a user ID, authenticate them, all that stuff. And then we want clerk to send this information to Convex. But the way it's going to send this information to Convex is it has to send it to my NextJS application, right? And so this is just very clear. It's going to send this to my NextJS application, and my NextJS application is going to send this to my Convex backend as a service, right? So this is how, let me fix the arrow. This is how it's going to work. User comes to my site, signs up, clerk handles the authentication, gives that information back to my NextJS application. My NextJS application inserts that information in my Convex database, and my Convex database gives me that information whenever I call it. And the way clerk passes this information to NextJS is through what we call a webhook. And if you're not familiar with what a webhook is basically an endpoint. So our webhook endpoint is going to be /API. Oh, let me make this clear. It's going to be /API/auth/webhook, right? Obviously, in front of the slash being our domain. And in this case, let's just say not whatsapp.com/API/auth/webhook. And we're going to give clerk this endpoint. And what clerk is going to do, when clerk has all the information ready, it's going to send a post request to this endpoint. And what's going to be included in that post request? The information that I need to store in my database. So I hope that makes sense. That's what we're going to build out. So for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to copy this webhook API that I've already written. The link to the code will be in the description. It's in my starter kit. So copy this right here, paste this. Now there's a couple things you're going to have to remove. I'm going to have to remove these two functions because we haven't created them yet. We're going to delete where they've been called. And then I see an unnecessary break here and an unnecessary break here and an unnecessary return here. And we are good to go. So we have our webhook API set up. And what I'm going to do in the meantime is under the try catch of user created, I'm going to do a console log. I'm going to do console log. I'm going to return not the event type, sorry. I'm going to return the payload. So we're going to see what data we get from clerk. I'm just going to console log this. So we have our webhook API set up, which is perfect. Now what we need to do is we need to tell clerk what our webhook API is. So I'm going to go to configure, and then I'm going to go to webhooks, and I'm going to create a new webhook here. So I'm going to click on add an endpoint. Now here's the thing. If I add my localhost endpoint here, it's not going to work because my localhost, guess what, is local to my device, right? Clerk will not be able to access my localhost. So I need to find a way where I can expose my localhost deployment, my local deployment to the internet so that clerk can fire to it. And the only way that you can do this, one of the ways you can do this is by using ngrok. if you have never used ngrok before, sign up and follow their quick start. It's pretty simple to set up, but I'm going to assume you either have ngrok or Cloudflare Tunnel set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to terminal, and in my terminal, I'm going to show you how easy it is to run ngrok. I'm just going to do ngrok http 3000. And what it's going to do is it's going to give me a URL that points to my localhost 3000. So my localhost 3000 is actually deployed to the internet. So if I go and hit this URL right here and I click visit site, guess where it takes me? It takes me to my localhost, which is great and which is what I need in order to test that my webhook works. So I'm going to copy the endpoint URL, and this is not the path to my webhook. This is the path to my web page. So what I'm going to do is /API/auth/webhook. This is the endpoint to my webhook. And the events I want to track, if you remember in my code, I had user.created and user.updated. These are the events I want to track. So I'm going to subscribe to events. I'm going to search user, and I'm going to do user created and user updated. And then I'm going to hit create, and then I'm going to get a signing secret. And this is the secret that I need to include in my .env.local. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the secret here. And the way you're supposed to name the Clerk webhook secret is as follows. We're going to do clerk_webhook_secret equals to this is your webhook secret. So we have all that set up. Now we're going to test if this really works. So I'm going to click on testing, click on send event, and then we're going to do user created event. And we're going to send an example. And I've always had it that the first time it doesn't really show the results. So I'm going to click send again. And once we click that again, let's just refresh. It says it failed. So if we go and click here and see why it failed, let's try to see what's going on here. It seems to have sent the data correctly. Let's look at, oh, I know the reason why. The reason this failed is, if you remember, we have a middleware. And in the middleware, what routes are public routes? Routes that are only in here. The reason why Clerk can't send the payload is because Clerk is being blocked by its own authentication. So in order to make this work, I need to add another route, and it's going to be API/auth/webhook. Now I'm going to save this, and I bet you if we go to endpoints, click on the same endpoint, testing, and we send user created again, if we send an example, I'm willing to bet this is going to be successful, and it is. So our webhook is configured properly. Now let's go to our server and see our console log. Look at the information that Clerk successfully passed us. There's information here like email address, the user ID, image URL, right? There's information like profile image, right? There's information like first name. These are things that we want to track in our Convex database, and that is what we're going to do. So here where you have the console log, we're going to have some sort of function that when called writes to our Convex database. And that's what we're going to do. So we've done the Clerk setup, we've done the webhook setup. Now we're going to do writing to our Convex database and reading from our Convex database. Let's get into it. So on the Convex docs, I'm in the schema section under database. And what we're going to do is we are going to write a schema. And what's amazing with Convex is even though it's a document database, it feels like Postgres or SQL, the way you write the queries and the way you write the schema. So let's create our user schema. We're going to go to our project. Let's clean up right here. Let's minimize the terminal. We don't need this for now. And what we're going to do is under the Convex folder, I'm going to create a new file called schema.ts. And under schema.ts, there's a couple things I'm going to import. I'm going to import define schema, and I'm going to import define table. And this is going to be from Convex server, right? So I need these imports, and I spelled Convex wrong. And this is imported successfully. And then I'm going to need to import values, v, from Convex values, right? So we have our imports. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do export default define schema. and it's going to be an object. We're going to define our schema. And the first table I want to define is users, and we're going to call define table. And in define table is going to be an object where we're going to need a user ID, which is going to be a value of string. We're going to need email, which is going to be a value of string again. We're going to need a created at, which we're going to make a value of number. And then we're going to have some optional fields, meaning the fields above will be mandatory. So we're going to do optional fields. So we're going to do name, right? Optional, but the value of this optional field is going to be string. And then we're going to have, I forgot a comma here. And then we're going to have profile image, which is going to be a value, which is going to be an optional value. And this optional value is going to be string. So we have name, profile image, created at, email, user ID. And then there's a couple things we're going to add index and basically say we should be able to index this table by user ID. And that's going to be user ID. And we should be also able to do this by name. I want to be able to search by name. And this is going to be name. I want to index by email. And that's it. So by user ID, by name, and by email. So I have my users table defined. Now what's cool is if I go back to Convex, I'm going to see that my users table has been created. Now this is the first step. Now what we're going to have to do once we've created our schema is we're going to need to be able to write data to our table. And this is essentially a mutation. So there's an example here for us, and we're just going to copy this example. And under the Convex folder, I'm going to create users.ts. And then I'm going to paste this example. Now this is an example where mutation is imported, and then we have values. And this mutation is called create task. I want to call this create user. And then in this create user, it says we have an argument here of text. We're going to have a couple things actually, because we're passing in some information, that payload object, if you remember from earlier, and it was not just one item, it was a bunch of things. And I'm just going to copy this and paste this here. So we're going to need a user ID, email value string, name value string, created at value number, and profile image value string. All right, so we have our arguments done. But now what we need to do is we need to insert this information into our user table. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment this out. And what we're going to do is we're going to write this together. So const new user equals await. We're going to take the context db. We're going to insert this information where? In the users table, boom, type safety. And then what we're going to do is we're going to copy this right here, paste this here. But we already passed the argument. So what we're going to do for user ID, we want args for arguments dot user ID. For email, we want args dot email, right? For name, we want args dot name. For created at, you guys get the gist, args dot created at. And then for profile image, it's args dot profile image. So this should insert this information into our database, and then we're just going to simply return new user. Now this is an async operation, so we're going to wrap this with a try catch, copy this here, paste this here. I'm just going to throw new error and say information did not insert successfully. All right, so we have our create user function done, but creating is just not enough. We need to be able to read the user information too. So let's write our read user function. And instead of a mutation, this is obviously going to be a query, which gets imported, just imported query. And this is going to be an object. And this object is going to have two things. We're going to have arguments, right? And then we're going to have a handler function, right? And this handler is going to be async. And there's going to be, we're going to have access to two things, the context and the arguments, this being an arrow function. And there you have it. So in order to read the user information, what is one important piece of information we need? We're going to need the user ID, and this is going to be a value of string, right? And in the handler function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a try catch. Here, what we're going to do const user info equals to await. We're going to take the context. We're going to query the DB. Which table are we querying? The users table. What are we going to do in this table? We're going to filter, and we're going to filter through every user in this table. And what we want to do is we want to return if there is a user, right, whose field, which field are we checking? The user ID. If there is a user with the user ID field that is equal to the user ID that is being passed, this should be field, sorry about that. I want that to be returned. So what are we going to do? We're going to take the arguments user ID and check against each user to see if there's a matching user ID. If there is a matching user ID, we want to return that, but we also want to return the first instance of this. And the reason why we just do dot first is this makes this call happy, and we also have to realize that there can't be multiple users with the same user ID, right? The user ID is unique. And if this doesn't work, we're just going to throw a new error, and we're going to say reading user did not work. Perfect. So I have my read user query and I have my create user query. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my API auth webhook. In that file, I'm going to put this to the side. When a new user is created, right, this API fires. In this case fires, right? We know this because we tested this with the console log. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create an object called user data. We're going to do const user data. And in this object, there's a couple things that we're going to pass. We're going to get the user ID, which you can get using payload.data.id, email, which you can use payload data email address is the first email address, name from the first name, and if the first name doesn't exist, just leave it empty. Created now is date now, and then we get the profile image again from the payload. And then what we're going to do is we're going to await fetch mutation, which is how you do a mutation server side using Convex. And then what I'm going to do is I want you to follow this syntax. I'm going to do API, and I'm going to import this from Convex. I'm going to do dot users, which is what? Exactly this file name right here. And I'm going to do dot, look at that type safety, create user, right? So this basically calls the create user mutation we wrote earlier, which is on this side right here. We can close this now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the user data object we just created. And this should be enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to run our project and run our Convex dev server. So make sure this is all running. Now what we're going to do is we're going to test this live. So I'm going to check on Clerk. I'm going to remove my account so that there's no already user information, and we're going to sign up again. So I'm going to create connect, and let's see if this works. Okay, it took me to a dashboard page. This dashboard page is empty, so that's fine. But moment of truth is if I go to my users table, look at my email, look at my name, look at my profile image, look at my user ID, and look at the creation time. This has been successfully built. So now I can store the authenticated user information in my Convex DB. But what about calling it? Let's say we want to display the user information here on the home page. How do we go about doing this? And this is pretty simple. I want you to go back to the docs, click on Quick Start, go to NextJS, and here is an example of how we can get our user information. So I'm just going to copy this right here, and I'm just going to paste this. This is a client component. We just imported use query and API. And you see here the same syntax, api.task.get. But we don't have a .task, so I'm going to remove that. And I'm going to do .users.readUser. And then we see that use query expects 2 arguments. I'm just going to call this user info, and I'll comment this out for now. And remember, the second argument we needed was what? If we go back to read user, is we need a user ID. And the user ID we can get from Clerk, because remember, our application is wrapped with the Clerk provider. All I have to do is use a hook called useAuth, and then I get the user ID. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open curly braces, and then we're going to need to pass the user ID. So we'll do that. And then it says it could be null. We're just going to add an exclamation mark, and that's that. And then what I want us to do is to render the user information. So we'll do JSON stringify the user info null and then 2. And then if we save this and we go to our home page, which we should be authenticated, we get our user information. And this user information is being read straight from Convex. So we have our project perfectly set up. We have authentication taken care of. We have our middleware where we can set up public and private routes. We have our Convex backend as a service set up, our table set up. Everything is set up. It's actually now time to start building the project. Super excited. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with the home page. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, you see this is the Convex chat app, and then if you click on start chatting, see that nice, beautiful loading animation. But what we see right now is this blank canvas with user information. This is not what we want. So let's write some code. Okay, so I'm going to close this stuff out. We're going to go to our app folder and page.tsx. So we're just going to remove this here, going to remove this, and we are going to build out our homepage. So what we're going to do is we're going to do main, and then in main, we're going to do class name. We're going to do flex, min height screen, flex call, item center, justify center. We want things to be centered. We're going to do a background color. And this is like that WhatsApp green color. This is the closest I could get to it right there. And then we're going to do, when it's dark, we're going to do background. Again, this is like dark mode WhatsApp, closest I can get to as well. And then we're going to do text white. And then we're going to do padding of 4. Now the application is going to be default dark mode. So, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that, but I just have these here just in case. So we're going to do div, class name, text center, and we want to do a space Y of 6. Perfect. And then we're going to do an H1, and in this H1 it's going to say welcome to not WhatsApp. Right, this is where your auntie gossips. We're going to do class name, text for Excel, font bold, and then when the screen is small, we're going to do 5XL. When it's medium, we're going to do 6XL. Perfect, 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 perfect. And then we're going to do a P tag, and in this P tag, it's going to say it, and then we're going to do ampersand APOS. S, and then we're going to do like WhatsApp. Now, I'm sure you know this, but you can't render that in between P tags, so you have to use this as a sign. So this basically renders out to that, right? Just if you didn't know. So it's like WhatsApp, but not, you know what we mean. Okay, perfect. And then we're going to do button, and this is from Chatcn. And in this button, we're going to do a link tag. And in this link tag, the href is going to be to chat/chat, right? And in this, it's going to say start chatting. Okay. And then there are some things we're going to add. We're going to make this as child because we have the link under the button. The size of the button is going to be a large. We want this to be a big button. And then classing, we're going to do background white. Text, again, this is that WhatsApp color. Just going to paste this in here. Oh, need to have the hashtag in front. Perfect. And then when we hover, we want to have a background gray of 100. And when it's dark, we want the background to be, again, these are WhatsApp specific numbers. So just feel free to pause the video and copy these. And then after that, we're going to do dark text white. We're going to do a dark hover of background. Again, sorry for these weird colors. I just want to keep it closely to the WhatsApp theme. Oops. Let me copy that properly. Hashtag that. So this is it right here. You can pause the video, copy that real quick. So we have our button set up, and for chat, we're just going to do class name, text large. We're going to do font semi-bold. All right. We should save this, and if we go to our page and we refresh, would you look at that? This looks quite similar to, let me go back to the home page here, but you notice the color is darker. And what I've done is I've just made it so it's default dark mode, and I don't give the user the option to make it dark mode, light mode, because I just like dark mode better. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use Chatcn's theme provider. So we're going to go back to docs, dark mode, and here we're going to need to install, it tells us here we need to install Next Themes. So go back to our terminal, button install Next Themes, and then we're going to copy this theme provider. So pretty simple, we just copy this code right here. You can click there if you want. Copy this code right here. And then if you remember under components, I had a folder called providers. This is where we put that. So I'm gonna do theme provider.tsx, paste this here. And then in our layout.tsx, I'm just going to wrap under here theme provider and then wrap the children. But there are some props that I need to pass. I'm going to copy these props right here. I'm going to pass these props. And you see where it says default theme, I'm going to make this dark. So when I go back to my home page and I refresh, let me run the server first. Sorry about that. Let's clear this, bond run dev. And then if I refresh my site, so I'm going to get this hydration error. And the way you fix this is you do suppress hydration error. And the reason why that error is caused is because of the extensions I have. So homepage is looking good, but our text is a lot bigger here. So that means we missed something. Let's go back to our p tag. Yes, I did not write any class for p tag. So let's do class name, text large. Actually, it's XL. We're going to do for medium text 2XL. And then we're going to make the text white, but we're going to tweak that a little bit, /80. And then the H1 has its class, p tag has its class. So if we refresh this, yep, can't even tell the difference. And notice here the text is green. It should be white, and that's because I spelled white wrong, of course. So save that. We are looking good. So our home page is successfully done. Next, we're going to work on our profile page, and that page is, I'll just show you by going to starting by our chat page. If we click on our profile image, we're taken to a /profile page. We see our user image, our name, and our email. We can edit our name, and we can also change the image, right? So I can hit that and it saves. And this is the page that we're going to be working on. Let's get started. All right, let's get started with the profile page. So I'm gonna head over to my VS Code, new theme, who this, and I'm gonna create new file under app, call it profile. And under profile, I'm gonna do page.tsx, right? So this essentially is going to be taking me to my profile page route. So I'm just going to create a simple fragment with profile in between. So if we go to localhost 3000 refresh, yep, we see profile here. That means our route is properly set. Now, in order to set up our profile page, there's some data that we're going to need, because if you notice on the WhatsApp clone, we have the user's name and we have the user's email. We also have the user's profile image. We also have the ability to edit, which is great, and to change the profile image, right? We want to be able to build that out. But in order to get the information, there's a couple things that we're going to fetch here. So the first thing that we're going to fetch is, the first thing we're going to get is the user ID. And this we get from our trusted clerk, right? I'm just going to await auth. Let me import this package right here, make this component an async. Perfect. Okay, now what I'm going to do const preloaded user info, and I'm going to await preload query, and in preload query I'm going to pass api.users.read user, but I need to make some imports so I can have the beautiful autocomplete on my side, right? And then it says I'm gonna need a second argument, and this second argument is me passing in the user ID, and I'm just going to assure that the user ID is there. That is perfect. Now let's write our JSX. We're going to have our trusted div, class name of flex call. We're going to do a height of screen. We're going to do a nice customized background color. Again, as always, just pause the video and copy that right there. And then we're going to do the same thing for the text color. It's going to be a nice custom one, so everything looks fresh right there. And underneath here, we're going to have a profile component. And in this profile component, we're going to pass the preloaded user information. And the reason why we're doing this is we want to get the preloaded user info on the server, and then pass it to a client component. So when the client component loads, it has the initial data loaded, so there's no flashes or anything like that, right? So like if I refresh here, notice it almost instantaneously accepts the image, which is fine with us. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a components folder, and here we're just going to call it profile.tsx. I spelled profile wrong. Profile.tsx, and then we're going to do export default function profile component, and we're just going to return a fragment. Save that, and then let's import this right here. But then it's saying we need to add in the props. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to add this right here. So preloaded user info, and the type for this is pretty fun. We are going to do preloaded info, user info, like that, and then paste that there. And this has to get closed, and these get imported. So I'm going to import preloaded. I'm going to import API, and our types are good to go. And one thing that we have to do is that this is a client component, so we have to add use client up top. So we're going to need router from use router. All right, that's imported. Make sure it's from navigation, not router. Our navigation is the updated package. And then we're going to track some state. We're going to track is editing. So if the input is being edited, like I showed you earlier on the profile page, the user can edit their name. So we're going to need to track state for this, and the original state, of course, is going to be false, right? And then we're going to get the user info using use preloaded query, right? And we're going to pass in the preloaded user info. And what this does is this makes it so that anytime user information changes because of this query, it's going to update right away, which is part of the reason why I love Convex so much. And then we're going to do const update user mutation equals to use mutation. And then we're going to do api.users.update name. We have not written this out yet, so we're just going to comment this out because we're going to write this out. And now we're going to build out our form. And for forms, I use React Hook form. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Actually, before I even start writing code, why don't I just show you the website and the documentation. Pretty simple to set up. I'm just going to copy this right here, the use form hook, right? I'm going to copy the use form hook, and then it's going to say I need to import use form from React Hook form, which is great. I haven't installed React Hook form, so what we're going to do is going to do bun install. I believe it's, just React Hook form. We'll copy that, paste this here, hit enter, save, good to go. So we have our use form set up. And then what we're going to do is we are going to add some default values. Within use form, I can open up my curly braces, type in default values, and then I'm going to just say name is user info name. But if it's empty, we'll just give it an empty string. So basically, when the form is being loaded, right, if you notice back on this site, when I hit refresh, the name is already populated. That's what this default values does. So that is perfect. That is what we need. And now we're going to do an on submit. And this is basically going to be for our form. But for now, I'm just going to do on submit. And then we're just going to return nothing. Like, we're just going to leave this for now. And we're also going to need handle image change. Handle image change. This basically handles the image, profile image changing. And we're going to make this an arrow function. And again, for now, we're just going to return nothing. Perfect. And then now let's write some JSX. So let's open up our brackets here. We're going to have a fragment. All right, we're going to do header. And within header, we're going to have a class name, background, again, custom color. We're going to paste this here. Oops, not $, wish it was $. All right, we're going to do padding 4. Flex, and then we're going to do items center. Oops, keep spelling center wrong. Perfect. And then we're going to have a link, and then this is going to link to the chat. And basically what this is right here. If I click this, it links you to chat. So we're going to import this from NextJS, from Next Link. Be careful to not import Lucid React. I've had some pain importing the wrong link. And then we're going to do button, and this button is from Shatcn UI. So let's import this right here. And then we're going to do a class name, not class name, so we're going to do a variant of Ghost. And we're going to do a size of icon. There's going to be an icon. And we're going to do class name of margin right 4. Perfect. And then within, we're going to do an arrow left from Lucid React. And then we're going to have this be class name of width height 6 and width 6, which will make it the right size. And then we're going to have a text color similar to close to the WhatsApp colors. So I'm just going to add that there and then close that. Perfect. So we have our arrow properly set up, and then we're going to have our H1, and the H1 is just going to say profile, but we're going to add some styling to that. So class name text XL, and then font is going to be normal. Okay, we're going to save that. I want us to run this and take a look. So let me run my Convex server as well. This is, yep, A-OK. So let's go to our local host, and when I hit refresh, okay, so I have my profile page and it's looking good. So let's continue writing out that JSX. So now we're going to do div. We're going to do class name of flex1. We're going to do overflow y auto. All right. And then we're going to do another div. This is going to be class name of padding 4. Flex call, items center. And then we're going to do another div. We're going to do a div that is relative, class name relative, with a margin bottom of 6. And then we're going to show our avatar. So we're going to use avatar from Shatcn. So it's going to be avatar and then avatar image. And this is going to be self-closing, of course. And then we're going to have an avatar fallback, right? And this is not self-closing. And if you want to know more about the avatar UI stuff, again, it's all right here. I'm just copying this code. But to make my life easier, let me copy the imports, paste it here. And then I believe I have not installed these. I have not. So we're going to do npx shatcn at latest add avatar. I believe it's just avatar that needs to get added, and we should be good. Perfect. Let me run my server back. Hit save. All right, we have our avatar. All right, we're going to pass in our image, and the URL for our image is going to be from user info profile image, and the alt is going to be just the username, user info name, and if it, again, that doesn't exist, we'll just make it empty, and this should be good. Add a question mark here. Perfect. And then the avatar fallback is just going to be the name of the user, and this should be good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add this camera right here. So let me go back to profile, this camera right here. That's what we're going to add. So underneath avatar, we're going to do label, and we're going to do HTML4 profile image. And then we're going to do a class name of absolute, bottom 0, right 0. We're going to do a custom background color and plop that in there. We're going to do rounded full P2, and then we're going to make the cursor a pointer when it's hovered over. Actually, or when it's just right there. Yep, perfect. So that is what we want. And then we're going to add camera from Lucid React. And then the class name is going to be width 6, height 6, right? And then we're going to add a custom color for the camera, make it stand out. Perfect. And then we're going to have an input, and this input is going to be self-closing, and we're going to have this have an ID of profile image. We're also going to have a type. It's going to be a file type, right? Because we're going to be uploading an image. It's going to accept any image type right there. So we're going to do that. We're going to have a class name of hidden because we don't want this to be seen. And the on change, in the on change, we're going to add handle image change. And if we go to our local host and we hit refresh, and why is the image not showing? Because I did not add a class name height 40 and width 40 to the avatar. Now we see the image, and we see, if I click on the camera, the ability to upload an image pops up, which is perfect. Let's keep on going. We still have the user information left to show. So we're going to go underneath this div right here, and we're going to write div, class name width full, max width medium, and then we're going to do a space Y4, right? So, okay, that should handle our spacing for us. And then what we're going to do is we're going to write div, and we're going to do class name, background, and then we're going to copy our custom color here. It's going to be nice little dark, and it's going to be P4 rounded large. And then we're going to have another label, and in this label, we're going to have a label here, and this one is also going to be from Shatcn UI. We're just going to import label from components UI label. I did not install that, so what we're going to do is we're going to install label, and then once that's done installing, perfect, we should no longer have any errors. Once I save this file, there you go. And this is going to be HTML for name. We're going to do class name, text, custom color. This is more nice and grayish, I believe. Perfect. And we're going to do text small, and the label is going to be name. So we're going to take our is editing state, and we're going to render something if it's true, and then we're going to render something else if it's false. So yeah, we're just going to render fragments for now, but let's start with this case. I'm just going to remove this here, and we're going to start with a form. We're going to do class name flex, item center, gap 2, and then margin top 1, typed center wrong. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do an on submit. We're going to pass an handle submit, and in handle submit, we're going to pass the on submit, right? So this on submit right here. This looks good, and this is how React Hook form works. Again, if you want to learn more, check out the documentation. You can see that code right here. Perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do an input, and this input is from Shatcn. I believe we don't have this imported, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do npx Shatcn add input, and that adds it to our components folder. So if I type in input now, I see it right there. That is perfect. This is self-closing. There's a couple things we're going to do here. We're going to register this so that whatever input is passed from here is name, and we're going to make it so that this is required, meaning you cannot submit this form without this element being populated. We're going to have a class name of background transparent. We're going to have no borders. We're going to have a text, custom color, of course, and we're just going to add this right here. And then we're going to focus visible, and then we're going to add a ring as 0. Perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure this auto focuses. That's a prop that we can pass. And then on blur, what we're going to do is that we are going to handle submit. On submit gets passed here, and this is perfect. So if the user essentially loses focus from the form, it auto submits, right? If there's been an input enter. So this is great for us. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a button, and this is obviously from Shatcn, and the type for this button is going to be submit, meaning when user clicks this button, this form gets submitted. And then the size is going to be small. We want this to be a small button, SM. And then class name, we're going to have to go for that green, for that WhatsApp green. And I'm just going to copy the colors here. you can paste this. You can pause the video and copy and write these out. And then the button's going to be save. And then if I go back to our page and I refresh, so I see I'm getting this error, and looking back at the code, I believe it's because I have this curly bracket right here, and this is supposed to close here. And then if I save this, you will see my name popping up here and my profile starting to look close to what I have here. So let's keep writing this JSX. So now what I'm going to do is, if editing is not true, I'm going to have a div here, closing div. And then what we're going to do here, I'm going to add a class name of flex, justify between, right? I'm going to add item center, and then we're going to have margin top of 1. And underneath this, I'm going to have a span. And this span is going to be class name, and we're going to have a custom color. I'm just going to copy paste this right here, pause the video and write that down, type that down. And then we're going to have user info dot question mark name. Right, and this should have the username. Perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a button, and this button, this button is going to have an icon, edit to from Lucid React, and we're going to customize this a little bit. Class name, height 5, width 5, and we're going to add a custom color, right? And then once this is done, let me paste that there. Perfect. And then once this is done, we're going to customize the button further. We're going to add a variant ghost. And what we're going to do, we're going to make the size small. And what we're also going to do is we're going to have an on click. And when this is clicked, set is editing will be true. And then this case will pop up, which is great. And then what we're going to do now is, if there is an error that pops up, so we're going to do errors.name, and that type safety is from React Hook Form, which is why, again, I love using React Hook Form for forms. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a span, class name, text red 500, text small, and then we're going to have margin top 1, and then we're going to say name is required. Perfect. And now if we go back here, and if I click on this, notice this becomes editable. But if, let's say I leave this empty and I hit save, I'll say name is required, which is exactly what I want. We're making perfect track. And then the last thing that we're going to do is under this div, I'm going to do div, I'm going to do class name, background, custom color. Let me just copy this right here, right? And then we're going to do padding of 4, and we're going to do rounded large. Perfect. And then we're going to add a label from Chatcn, and this label is going to have email, and under label we're going to have a div, and this div is going to have user info email. So we're going to render the user email. I spelled email wrong, and there's an extra curly brace. And within the div, we're going to do a class name, and we're just going to copy these styles over. It's custom text color and margin top 1. And then the same thing for the label as well. We're just going to copy paste some styles here. This is going to be custom color, text small. So if I go back and I hit refresh, this is my profile page, and it's starting to look good. The only issue is this is not functional. If I hit save, nothing happens. If I refresh, it goes back. So our JSX is done, so this is great, but there's some functionality we have to write out, such as on submit and handle image change. So let's start with the on submit. Now the on submit is going to have to be an async operation, and therefore we're going to have a try catch block. And what's cool is with the on submit, we get the data, basically the user submitted data. And one thing that we're going to have to do for type safety sake is we're going to have an interface here called profile form data, and it's just name string, because that's the only thing the user can submit. And I'm just going to pass this type here, and we should have no issues moving forward. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a simple check. We're going to say if user info has user ID, right? They have to have a user ID. We're going to await, update, user mutation. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass the user ID, user info.user ID, because the user ID doesn't change. And then we're going to pass in what did change, which is data.name, right? Again, we don't have update user mutation. That's something we're going to work on the API update name, but just going to write this for now. And then once this has happened, what we're going to do is underneath here, we're going to do set as editing is false. And then we're going to do a router refresh. We're going to refresh the page, and that should be it. And then we can have actually a simple else here. And if this doesn't work, we can just console the error, say user ID is undefined. And if this is the case, then we have some problems. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to console.error the error, and we'll call this a day. So this is our on submit. Perfect. This is going to work fantastic. And now what we're going to do is let's add the update name convex function. So what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way to our convex folder. We're going to go to users, and we're going to work on export const update. It's actually update name, and this is a mutation. And the arguments for this are going to be user ID, which is going to be a value of string, and it's going to be name, which is going to be a value of string. And then we're going to have our trusty handler function, and our handler function, of course, is going to be async, and we're going to have the access to the context and the arguments, which is great. And then we're going to do this. We're going to first get the user document. So we're going to do await context.db.query. We're going to query the users table, and then we're going to filter, right? Basically what we're going to filter by is we're going to see if the user ID we passed is equal to any of the user IDs available, right? So that's what we're doing here, user ID, and then we're going to pass args user ID. Perfect. So we're going to get the matching user information. And then if this user doesn't exist, then we are going to throw an error because there is no user info to update, right? And we need user info to update. How can you update if there's no user info? And then what we're going to do is, if there is, we're just going to const update user equals to await. We're going to do context.db.patch. We're going to do user._ID. And then we're going to pass name, and what we want the name to be from now on is the arguments.name. Now I'm getting an error here. Oh, that's because I forgot .first, right? I want to get the first instance of this. Perfect. So now my update user function should work. So my name is Michael currently. If I refresh, you'll see. Now if I do Ras Mike and I hit save and I refresh, my username has been updated. If we go to our Convex DB, we see that it has been changed to Ras Mike. So we can update our username. Now we should be able to update our image. And in order to do that, we're going to need to work on our handle image change function. So let's get started. In order to handle image upload, we're going to need the event, and the type is going to be React change event. And then it's going to be HTML input element, and then we're just going to close that. So our types are perfect. And then we're just going to get the file. So we're going to do EE target and then files. And then we're just going to get the first one. And then if there is no file, then return because there's nothing to upload. And then we're going to do a try catch because it's an async operation. So we're going to do const reader equals to new file reader. Perfect. And then we're going to do reader dot onloaded load end. And this is going to be an arrow function. And for now, we're just going to leave this blank. And then we're going to do reader dot read as data URL, and we're going to pass in the file. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do const post URL equals to await fetch mutation And what we're going to do is we're going to get API.chats.generate upload URL. Now we don't have this endpoint yet, but basically what this does is it gives us the upload URL, and we're going to write that function in a second. But for now, let's just assume that it's there. We're going to do const result equals to await fetch. We're going to fetch the post URL, and we're going to do method. Obviously, it's going to be a post request. The headers are going to be a content type, and the type is going to be the file type. Perfect. And then we're going to add the body. In the body, we're going to add a file, which is great. Now, if the result of this is not okay, so I should add the not, we are going to throw an error, throw a new error, and we're basically going to say, hey, upload, we're going to say upload failed. We're going to do upload failed, and then we're going to do result.status text. So we're going to get the reason why the upload failed. And then what we're going to do is we're going to extract, assuming that the upload worked, we're going to extract the storage ID from the result.json, which is great. We're going to have access to the storage ID. And what we're going to do is we're going to do const URL, and we're going to await fetch mutation again. And we're going to go to api.chats.get upload URL, and we're going to pass in the storage ID. And what we're going to do after this is we're going to do if URL and user info.user ID exist. We're going to await one last fetch mutation. And what we're doing is we're going to update, we're going to update the profile image. So we're going to do API users update profile image, and the arguments we're going to pass are user ID to identify the user. So we're going to do user info user ID, and we're going to pass the profile image, which is going to be the URL, right? And in order to know exactly how Convex does a file upload, they have it in their docs. It's pretty well documented. And you can just go through this right here, right? this is the code that I'm writing here. It's all in the docs. So now that we have this, and we're just going to console error the error from the catch, there's a couple of Convex functions we have to write. We have to write api.chats.generate upload URL, api.chats.get upload URL, and then an API users update profile image. So let's get started with those. For Convex, I'm going to go create a new file called chats.ts, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste export const get upload URL mutation. I'm going to import mutation async. We just need the context, and we're going to return await context.storage.generate upload URL. So this gets us the upload URL right here, generate upload URL. Let me save this. And this should be good. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to write the get upload URL. And the get upload URL is a pretty simple one as well. And we're just going to paste this right here. We're going to import value. And what get upload URL is, it's a mutation. Argument is the storage ID. And then it just awaits the storage.get URL, passing the storage ID. And we're going to get the upload URL, which if we save here, that's taken care of. And last but not least, we're going to go to our users.ts API. And what we're going to do is we're going to construct a function similar to update name, but this one is going to be update profile image. This is a mutation as well, right? And what are we going to pass? We're going to pass the arguments. It should be simple now. By now, you should fully understand how to construct these functions in Convex because they're just so simple. I'm passing in the user ID and the profile image, and then I'm going to write out my trusted handler function, which is going to be an async operation, and I have access to the context and the arguments in the handler function. And we're going to get, actually to make even our lives easier, I'm just going to copy this right here. We're going to get the user information, because we're going to need to do that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to write const update user equals to await context db.patch. Again, we're going to get the user ID. And what we're going to do is we're going to update the profile image with the profile image in the arguments. And then what we're going to do is just going to return update user. I'm just going to copy paste this right here. And that's it. And if we go back to profile and we click save, no more errors. Now let's test if this actually works. Going to refresh this. I clicked on this. This is great. I'm going to click on that image and it has changed. And if I refresh this, that is my profile image. If I go back to my DB and I click on profile image, I see a .convex.cloud. And then if I click on it, there it is. So my profile page is complete. It didn't take that much code. Convex makes it super, super easy. So next we're going to be building out our chat section. Let's head over there. All right, let's build our chat page. Now, just to give you some context how this looks, we see we have a sidebar. We have a header right here. We see how we have a header. And then we have this section currently says not WhatsApp, where your auntie comes to gossip. That space between the text and the period is killing me. And then there's a button here. If I click this button, this search pops up and then I can search users. Okay, cool. But then what happens if I click the text? Then I see this. So this changes, but the sidebar and the header seem to be not changing. So what I need to do is I need to use a layout. And the reason why I need to use a layout is we're going to go back to the diagram. Think of this as your site, right? Let's remove the background. And we know that this part of the site, I'm just going to draw this right here, and I'm going to draw this right here. And we're going to call this header, and we're going to call this sidebar. And this we're going to call our, let's say, main, like our main app. So we know that the sidebar and the header are not going to change much, right? Stylistically, they're going to be the same. Maybe certain information might change, but generally these don't change. But this changes, right? This changes based on who you're talking to. So for example, I'm talking to message me right now, but let's say I was talking to, I don't know who's available. Let's say I was talking to Michael. Notice how the information changes, right? The stuff here changes based on who I've clicked on the sidebar. So in order for this to happen, we're going to need to have a layout.tsx, and we're going to implement the sidebar and header there, and we're going to wrap the main app with that layout so that this can be consistent and it's this that changes, right? I just wanted to give you a high level overview of this. Let's get to writing some code. So what we're going to do is we're going to, under app, create a new folder called chat, and under chat we're going to create a layout.tsx. Right, this is going to be our layout for chat, and in this layout right here there are a couple things we're going to do. First, let's define this function. This is going to be a server component, sorry. We're going to call this chat layout. Perfect. And we're just going to return a fragment for now. Let's just return a fragment from now. But the chat layout is going to have children, right? And we're going to wrap these children with the sidebar, like I mentioned in the header. And the type children is React Node. All right, perfect. We have our type set up. Now, there's some information that we're going to need when we go to /chat. So when I go to here, when I go to chat, let me just remove this right here. If I go to chat, nice loading animation there, you're going to see that it already has populated my information. And the reason why it's populated my information is because in the layouts, I need to have access to my user ID, and Clerk makes that super simple. And all I have to do is await auth. They have this helper function called auth that I just need to import, and I can get access to user ID. Now, user ID is not enough. I need user information, my user information, and I also need the conversations I've had, right? The chats I've had, right? Because the second I'm on this page, you see that I have all this information loaded. Truth be told, you know, when I refresh this loading state I have, I don't even need that loading state because I get all this information server side and pass it to the client. But the reason I have it is just because it looks nice and WhatsApp has that loading animation, right? So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of the layouts, and let's maybe do this in a tree structure. Think of it this way. We have our layout, right? Our application is wrapped by this layout. And in this layout, we're going to have our sidebar, and the sidebar is going to be self-closing, right? We're going to have our sidebar, but then we're going to have our header, and our header is going to wrap the rest of the application, like the specific chats, right? And like the chat form, like where I type the message and hit submit. So the header is going to wrap all of that. The sidebar is going to be next to the header and the chat form. Here's the thing. If the layout.tsx, if I fetch data here, so let me just draw an arrow here. If I fetch data here in the layout, I can 100% pass the data down in this component tree, correct? I can pass data that I fetched in layout all the way to chat form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fetch data in layout and pass it to chat form. The reason why I'm doing that is the moment I get to /chat on my app, I have all the data I need, and I don't even need this loading state. And just to show you, just to prove this to you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run, let me run my application. Let me just close this. I just want to show you that the loading state is for viewing pleasures. I'm going to go to localhost 3000, but this is like the finished application. So let me just refresh this page, right? And then I have this loading state here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this loading state, and I want you to see that refresh. Notice how everything is loaded in already. And the reason why everything is loaded in is because we fetch the initial data in the server, right? So before the client components have even rendered. And when the data is, once the data is fetched, the data is already available for the client components to render the data. This makes it super, super fast. So even though like you see that flash for the images, like everything else is rendered right off the bat. And I personally like that data fetching pattern, but just to make it look more like WhatsApp, I have a loading state, and that just looks pretty awesome. So we're gonna fetch data on the server, and we're gonna pass it to our client components. So our client components have access to it right away. But I'll explain more of the architecture as we continue to write code. I just wanted to share that with you. So understanding that, let's run our project. Let's make sure that's running, and let's start working on user information. Now, to get the user information, to fetch the user information is pretty simple. But what we want to do is, and I'm probably going to have to draw another diagram, is what we want to do is, let's think of it this way. Let's say this is the server, and let me use a different color, and this is our client, right? We want the initial data to be fetched from the server and then passed to the client. But we also want to make sure that whatever changes the client makes is available for us to see and is instant, right? The reason being is, for example, if we were just fetching data from the server and passing it to the client, and if the client makes changes, technically the server is not going to refetch unless we write some code for it to do that. The way they do it in Convex is pretty simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to call preload query, which is going to be called on the server, and whatever data we get, we're going to pass that to the client, but we're going to pass it to a hook called use preloaded query. So it's use preloaded query. And basically what this does is I have the benefit of fetching data on the server and instantly getting that data when the client, when the component renders, but also whatever client actions I do, this will auto update, right? So if let's say if I get a new message and I've already preloaded the messages and passed those preloaded messages to this use preload query, the message will show up instantaneously. And that is what makes a great chat app, right? It has to be real time, it has to be instantaneous. So that's what we're going to do. And in order to do this, we are going to say const preloaded user info. We're going to make this equal to await preloaded query. Remember that function I was telling you about? Of course, I spelled it wrong. We're going to do preload query, not preloaded. And then here we're going to do API. We're going to import API so we can get that type safety. API.users.readUser. And then we're just going to pass the user ID that we get from Clerk, right? So user ID, exclamation mark. So we have our preloaded user info. And then what we're going to do is we're going to preload conversations in chat here. We haven't written out our chat schema or anything like that, so I'm just going to skip that for now. So we have our preloaded information. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new component called chat layout wrapper. And this chat layout wrapper is going to wrap the children. And this chat layout wrapper is going to have a prop of preloaded user info. And guess what we're passing? Preloaded user info. We're going to also pass the preloaded conversations, but we have not made that yet. So now let's create this component. So under chat, I'm going to create a folder called components with that right in front of it. And we're going to write chat layout wrapper.tsx. Perfect. And then we're just gonna add export default function chat layout wrapper, and then we're just going to return a fragment. Hit save, and then we're going to import this, and we're going to make preloaded user a prop. And what's cool is there is a type for this, so we can keep our type safety. Let me just check. The type for this is going to be this interface that I paste. I'm just going to remove conversations because we don't have that now. We're going to import preloaded, and then we're going to import API. And this is the type for preloaded user info. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pass child layout props. I also need to pass children. And there you have it. We are good. No errors. Now let's work on our chat layout wrapper. So we're going to need our sidebar. We know that. We're going to need our header. We know that, right? And we're going to also have to set up our nice loading state, our nice loading WhatsApp state. Even though we don't need it, we're going to set that up. And yeah, that should be good. So let's start first with getting some information that we're going to need from Clerk. And we're going to use the use auth hook. And what we're going to need is we're going to check if the user has been loaded in, if the user is signed in, and we're going to get the user ID. And this is why I love Clerk. Look how simple that is, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to have a state that's going to be should show loading, set should show loading, and it's going to be use state, right? Perfect. Import that, and this is going to be true. Right, so we're going to have it true. Okay, so we're going to do const user info. We're going to call use preloaded query, and we're going to pass preloaded user info. Perfect. So now we have our user info, and then we're going to have a use effect. Now, again, this use effect is just to show the loading state. And the reason why I have this use effect is because the data fetching is actually like so fast that if it's just based on, like, I've tried to fetch data on the client here, because this is, by the way, supposed to be use client, and it literally takes a few seconds to get the data. So the loading state like flashes. We're going to sort of force delay it just so it looks nice. And the best way to do this is to use a set timeout, called it timer. And then I set should show loading to false, set that to 1000, and that should work. And what we do is once this is complete, you want to clear the timeout. And then the conditional for this to show is going to be const is loading equals to is loaded. And then if user info is undefined, right? if user info is undefined, and if should show loading is true, right? If any of these is true, then the loading state will show. So we're going to do is loading, and then we're going to return loading state, which we are going to create in a few seconds. And a nice little check I have is if not signed in, then return null because user's supposed to be signed in. And finally, we can write our return here. We're going to do div. We're going to do a div here, and then we're going to have our sidebar. We're going to have our header that's going to wrap the children, right? So this is what we have so far, a couple components that we're going to have to create. But before we do, let's add class name to the div. This is going to be flex, height of screen, background. We're going to do a dark background of, again, sorry for the custom color. You're just going to have to pause this and write this out. I'm pasting it here. And then we're going to do overflow hidden, right? This is great, but we have 3 components that we're going to have to write. Let's do loading state first. So I'm going to do loading state in components here because this is going to be used throughout the app. So I'm going to do loading .tsx, right? Let's do loading.tsx. This is going to be a client component, and we're going to export default function loading state, and then we're going to return a fragment. Now, if you notice in our application, when we refresh, there's that little progress bar. So we're going to have a state to track that. So we're going to do progress, set progress equals to use state, right? Perfect. And let me make sure this is imported. We have use state imported, and it's going to obviously start at 0. Now for the progress, we're going to use an use effect with a set interval. I would pause this right now and write this down. This is basically going to handle our progress bar. Now, once that's done, we're going to start writing our return, our JSX. And here we're going to write div. And in this div, we're going to do class name, flex, height screen, background color. You know, we have to do that custom. And we are going to copy that, paste that there. And what we're going to do here, we're going to have another div. And in this div, we're going to do class name, flex1, flex call, perfect. And then we're going to have another div. You get a div, everyone gets a div. We're going to do another div, class name, flex1, flex call, items, center, justify, center, gap 3. And this is supposed to be center right here. And then I'm going to copy paste this SVG. This is basically the WhatsApp logo SVG. Just copy pasted that there. You can find that. I believe there is a tool called svgl.app, WhatsApp. You can get it there. But I'm pretty sure I'm using a different one, but you can get the same one from here, a different one from here. And then under the SVG, we're going to have a div. And in this div, we're going to do class name, text, center. We're going to do margin bottom of 8. And under this one, we're going to have our H1. And our H1 is going to include this text that says what's app, right? And then we're going to do class name, text. We're going to do this custom color here. All right. And then we're going to do text XL, font light, and margin bottom 1. Perfect. And then we're going to have our final div, one of our final divs, class name flex, item center. Why do I keep spelling center wrong? Item center, justify center, gap 2, text, and then we're going to do a more grayish text right here, 6A0. Perfect. And then we're going to do a lock icon, and this is going to be from Lucid React. We're going to do class name, and we're going to do width 3, height 3. This is self-closing. And then we're going to do a span. And this span is going to be class name, text small. And we're going to say end to end encrypted. Not really, because it's not really encrypted at all. And then we're going to add our progress, and our progress is going to be under this div right here. We're going to do div class name width 64. And once we do that, we're going to do progress value progress, which is our state variable. And then this is class name h1 background. We got a custom color. Class name. We're going to do h-1 background. It's going to be custom color 202C33. And then this is self-closing. Now I'm getting this error because I have not installed this component from shadcn. So we're going to add progress, npx shadcn add latest add progress, hit enter. So that should be good. And then all I have to do is import this from UI, clear that and run run dev. And if I hit save, that is good. I have my loading state taken care of. So if I go here and I hover on loading state and I add import, there you have it. Our loading state is good. Now we have to work on our sidebar. So what we're going to do is underneath the components folder here, we're going to create another component called sidebar.tx. All right, let's get started with the sidebar component. So what we're going to do is we're going to do export default function sidebar. For now, we're just going to have no props, and then we're just going to return a simple fragment. All right, so we have that. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is there's some stuff that we're going to need. First, we're going to need the path name. So I'm going to use path name, which is a hook provided by Next Navigation, which is perfect. And then we're going to have some state called search query. And then we're going to call this set search query. And this is going to be use state. And the empty state is just going to be nothing. And then we're going to import use state. Perfect. Then we're going to get sign out from our trusted friends at Clerk. We're going to use auth. Use auth hook gives us the sign out function, and then wherever we call that in an on click, it will sign the user out. And then last but not least, we're going to use router from use router. But remember, we're going to import from Next Navigation, which is perfect. Okay, now that we have this, let's jump straight into our JSX. So we're going to start with the trusted div. We're going to do a class name. We're going to do a fixed width of 70 pixels, right? This is our sidebar. And then when it's medium sized screen, we're going to do fixed width of 380 pixels. And then at large, we're going to do 1/4. And then we're going to make sure the height at all screen sizes is going to be height of screen, flex column, background. Let me close this side so you guys can see perfectly. Then we're going to do when it's dark, we're going to have a custom color. It's going to be 111 B21. Perfect. We're going to have a border at the right, and then we're going to do border. And then at dark, when it's dark mode, the color is going to be hashtag 313D45. We're going to close that, and that is perfect. All right. So we have the parent div on lock. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the header. So let me just have that comment there. And then we're going to do div class name. We're going to do shrink 0. We're going to do padding x3, padding y. We're going to make it a custom number, 18 pixels. And for medium size, we're going to do padding 14 pixels. Right, and then we're going to do background muted. For dark, we're going to have a background, again, it's going to be custom 202C33. It's going to be flex, justify center, and for mid-size, it's going to be justify between, and then we're going to have item center as always. Perfect. And then we're going to have a link, and this link is going to, when someone clicks on it, it's going to take them to the profile page. Make sure that we import this again from next link, not Lucid. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the avatar. And And then we're also going to get the avatar image, right? Perfect. And the avatar is going to have a class name of width 8, height 8. It's going to have a medium width 9 and medium height 9. So that's perfect. Sizes accordingly. And then we're going to make this the user info dot profile image. Now we are going to get some props in a bit, but for now I'll just comment this out. And yeah, okay, so we have our link, perfect. And then under our link, we're going to have a div, and this is where we're going to do class hidden, but this will show on mid-size screen, justify center, item center, and we're going to have a gap of 2, and we're going to have a component here called search component, but we have not made this yet, so we're just going to comment this out. And then we're going to have drop down. Now we're going to use drop down from ShadCN. And if I just go to drop down menu, I'm just going to copy these imports right here, make my life easy. And then I'm going to copy this example drop down right here and paste it right here. And what I'm going to do is I need to add drop down menu. So I'm going to do drop down dash menu, and that should add it to the component/UI. We're going to do a couple things. So as trigger, I'm going to add as child. And the reason I'm going to add as child is because I will get a hydration error when I add a button underneath the drop down menu trigger. So adding a button, this is from ShadCN. Import that, and then we're going to do class name height 10, width 10. And this is going to be a variant ghost. And this is going to be size icon, right? And then the icon here is going to be more vertical from Lucid React. And for styles, we're going to have a height of 5 and a width of 5. All right, we're going to save that. And then we're just going to remove the label and the separator. We're just going to need one drop-down menu item. So we're going to delete all this. And the one item we're going to need is a log out button, which is perfect. And then we're going to add an on click to the item. And remember the sign out that I imported from use auth. That's what we're going to call here. So we're going to call sign out. That's going to sign us out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to router.push back to the home page because the user is getting signed out. Okay, so we have our header done. Now we're going to work, and if we go back to our application, go to chat, we're going to work. So we just did our header, right? This is what we did right here. This is going to be the search component, right? This is the more vertical with the logout. This is our profile. Now we're going to work on the search input and our conversations list. So let me just copy here and then say search input, and let's write the JSX for that here. So we're going to do a div, class name hidden, medium block, so only shows for the bigger screen sizes. And then we're going to add padding 2 with a custom color, background color of 111 B21. Perfect. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add another div, and this is going to be class name relative, background color again custom. It's going to be 202C33. We're going to have rounded, that's large. We're going to flex this and item center this. Perfect. And now we're going to add one more div, and this div is going to have padding left of 4, padding right of 2, and padding y-axis of 2 as well. And in this div is where we're going to have search from Lucid React, and it's going to be class name. We're going to have a height 5, width 5, with a text custom color. It's going to be 869680, right? And we're going to save that. We're going to close this search from Lucid React. And underneath this div right here, we're going to have input, and this is going to be self-closing. And in input, we're going to have placeholder search, right? And then we're going to have value be search query, remember the state that we had defined here. And on change, what we're going to do is we're going to get the event, and we're going to pass that event to set search query, and it's going to be e.target.value, right? So whatever has been typed here is going to be set as the search query. And then we're going to have a class name of width full, background transparent, border none, text is going to be a custom color. That custom color is going to be E9 EDEF. We're going to save that, perfect. And then we're going to have a placeholder, and the placeholder text color is going to be 8696A0. We're going to close that, perfect. And our focus is going to be outline none on focus, and then P y-axis 2 text dash base, and we are good. Okay, so our search input is good. Now we're going to work on our conversation list, right? So this part right here. So for our conversation list, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a div. We're going to do class name flex1 overflow, and we're going to do overflow y auto. Perfect, save that. And then we're going to go through filtered conversations. I'm just going to paste this here, but we haven't specified filtered conversations yet, so I'm just going to make filtered conversations an empty array, right? And I'll just make this like an any type right now. We'll just do filtered array. And then what we're going to do is we're going to map over filtered conversation, sorry. We're going to pull out each chat, and this is what we're going to return. Make sure it's the smooth brackets, not the curly brackets. It's going to be link, right? And link, again, we get to pass an href, and this href will take the user to chat/chat ID. And basically what this is doing is, when I click on this chat, notice the URL change right there. When I click on this chat, notice the URL change. That is what's happening here, and this is what we want to see. Perfect. And then we also want to pass a key because this is mapping over. So we're going to do chat ID, right? We're going to do chat ID. That should be perfect. And for now, I'm just going to set this to any. We're going to do a div. In this div, we're going to have a class name of flex item center. We're going to do px2, py2, medium px3, medium py3. And we're going to have a hover background, going to be custom. It's going to be 202C33, and we're going to have a cursor pointer. So when we're on it, the cursor will be pointing. And then what we're going to do here is we're also going to wrap this in the curly braces, and we're going to have some conditional styling. So I'm going to change the quotation marks, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a new line here. I'm going to do $ curly braces, and I'm going to say path name dot split, and we're going to split by the slash, and we're going to check the third element, the second index, and we're going to check if this equals to chat ID. If this does, we're going to add this background color to, it's going to be 202C33. And if it doesn't, we're adding nothing. And basically what we're doing is when I've clicked on this right here, notice the background color is different. It's checking that this path name matches the chat ID, right? And this is essentially the chat ID. So it's checking if the path name matches the chat ID. When it does, it applies this background, which it is doing in the example right here, in the deployed project right here. So that's what we want. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add another div. We're going to do class name relative. And then we're going to have an avatar again here. And the avatar is going to be of class name width 12 and height 12. Close the avatar. And then we're going to do an avatar image. And the source of this image is going to be chat image. And this is self-closing, right? Perfect. And then we're going to have an avatar fallback. I'm just going to paste this here. And the avatar fallback, let me import these We're going to import from Chatien, and then we're going to import an icon users too. And if there is no image, this is what the fallback is going to be. It's going to have that custom color, and it's going to use this icon from Lucid React. And that is good. All right, so we're going to keep on going. Now we're going to work on our conversation details. And this is essentially only going to be visible when it's on a medium or larger screen size. And basically that's this right here. So if I send GG, you see like the last message that's either sent by me or received. That's the conversation details we're going to render. And this is going to be pretty simple. We're going to do div, class name, hidden, medium block. And we're going to do flex-1, medium width 0, min width 0, and then ml3. All right, we're going to save this, good. And then we're going to have another div. It's going to be class name, flex, justify, between items, baseline. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have an h2. And this h2 is going to be a class name of text. We're going to have a custom color. It's going to be E9EDEF. All right, text base, font normal, and we're truncating it. So, all right, perfect. And this now is going to be highlight text, text equals chat.name, and the search query is going to be search query. Now, this component, we obviously have not made this yet, but basically what the highlight text component is going to do is when I search, let's say I search GG, notice how it searched the recent text and it brought that result up to front. That's what we want to do. And if I search name, that's what it does, and that's what we want it to do. That's what highlight text is going to do. We'll write that code out in a second. Now let's continue on. Under the H2, we're going to write span, and this is going to be class name text dash, we're going to do custom color 869 6A0, right? And we're going to close that. That's great. And we're going to do text XS ML-2, right? And we're going to do margin left 2, and then we're going to do shrink 0. And here we're just going to have yesterday for now, but it's going to be how, like, from the time the person messaged you. So if they messaged you yesterday, it'll show yesterday. But if they message you today in recent time, we'll just show you the time here, and we'll write that code out in a second. So under this div right here, we're going to write another div, and we're going to do class name flex, item center. We're going to do justify between, right? And then we're going to do a p tag. And in this p tag, we're going to have, let's do it in the tag, class name text, custom color. We're going to do 869 6A0, and we close that. That's perfect. And then we're going to do text small, truncate, and then padding right to perfect. And we're going to have a conditional here. If chat type is image, we're going to do image here. What we're going to render is as follows, and then if it's something else, we're going to render something else. Let's start with the first part. We're going to do span, and in here we're going to do class name. Oops, we're going to do class name flex, item center. We're going to do a gap of 1, perfect. And then within the span, we're going to have another span, and it's going to be class name, and we're going to have text, custom color here. It's going to be 869 6A0. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy the camera emoji and paste it here. And it's going to say photo. And then if the type is not image, we're just going to return highlight text, but highlight text doesn't exist. So I'm just going to comment that out for now. So the reason I'm getting this red is because I just realized I wrote this code outside the proper place. So under this div right here above the link, I paste this here, and then I can just add a fragment here, and we are good to go. So our JSX is essentially done. Now what we have to do is we have to write out our filtered conversations, And we also have to write out our highlight text component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write highlight text right under here. So we're going to do const highlight text, right? We're going to make this an arrow function. We're going to take text and search query, right? Text and search query. And we know that both text is going to be a string and search query is going to be a string as well, right? And then we're just going to have that there. Perfect. So first things first, if we have no search query, essentially there is nothing for us to highlight. So we're just going to return the text, right? Because there's nothing for us to highlight here. We're just going to return the text. But what we're going to do is we're going to do const parts text.split, and we're going to do new regular expression, and we're going to pass the search query, right? So we're going to pass the search query. We're going to pass the search query, and then we're going to do comma GI. Now this part, I'm not going to lie to you, I used AI to do this part, and this is where we live in a great time because research like this just takes a few seconds. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the highlighted parts, and to do that, I'm going to map over parts, and then we're going to get part, and we're going to get index, right? I'll just make it I for simplicity's sake. And then we're going to return part dot to lowercase, and we're going to check if this is equal to the search query dot to lowercase. And if this is the case, I need to add brackets both here. If this is the case, then what we're going to do is we're going to have a span with the key being the index, right? So we're just going to have I, nice and simple. And we're going to have a class name of background. We're going to have some custom color, 00A884, and then text is going to be 111B21. Close that. And then we're going to have padding x-axis 0.5, and then it's going to be rounded. And what we're going to return here is part. But if this is not the case, what we're going to do is we're going to span key, right? Key is going to be the index, and we're just going to return part. Now that we have our highlight text, if we go back to where we commented on highlight text, we should be able, let me just search highlight text where we've used it and highlight it here. Perfect. And we're just going to remove the fragment here. All right, perfect. No errors here. And then, but what we need to do is we need to work on our search, our filtered conversations, right? So in order for filtered conversations to work, I need first and foremost user info, and I also need the conversations, right? I need the conversations, my goodness, my spelling, conversations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to where sidebar is being called. So we're going to go to layout, chat layout wrapper. And then here's where we call sidebar. And I know for sidebar, we have the user info. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the user info here directly. So let's just comment out header, because I don't think I've worked on that yet. No, I haven't. And then for sidebar, we're just going to import, nope, not from Lucid React. Be careful. We're going to do from sidebar, and I'm going to pass the user info. And then we're just going to pull the user info here. Now it's going to ask me for a type. So for type safety's sake, I'm just going to pass preloaded user info, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the type here. I'm just going to copy this interface, call it sidebar props. And we're just going to pass that there. We're just going to import this, right? Make it easy on ourselves. We don't need no children, and it's going to be preloaded user info. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do const user info equals use preloaded query, and I'm just going to pass the preloaded user info. And now we have access to user info, and there's a couple places I commented it out. Let's see right here, we can have that. And then let's see if there's anywhere else. Nope, I think it's that image right there. And then if we go back to layout, chat layout wrapper, and we hit save, Now what I want us to do is I want us to comment out header, but have children show. Oops, having a little issue here. Comment that out. And then I'm just going to create a page.tsx, and we're just going to have export default function chat, and then we're just going to return page. All right, so let's check out our page, and okay, this is not looking right. And I think if we move this class name from avatar to avatar image, and then we do a rounded full, if we hit save, there you go. Okay, so now our sidebar has come to life. We have our logout. This takes us to profile. All right, and we have our loading state. That's perfect. We have our search. It doesn't work. And we have, so we have, and our page is being rendered. We see page right here. So far, so good. So even though our sidebar is coming together, the one big thing that we're missing is conversations, chats, messages, whatever you want to call it. And that's what we're going to work on now. And before we start writing this code out, we're going to go to our Convex folder. And we actually created this file before. It's chats.ts. In chats.ts, there's a couple functions that we're going to create. First, we're going to create a create or get conversations, create or get conversations function. And then we're going to create a send message function. And then we're going to create a get conversation function. And then we're going to create a get messages function, and then we're going to create a delete conversation function, and generate upload URL and generate upload get upload URL will be as is. So this is going to get create or get conversations, and I'm going to show you that functionality in a second. This is going to send messages. This is going to get a conversation, this is going to get messages, and this is going to delete conversations, right? So delete, a great example of delete is just me going here, clicking on that, delete chat, yes, and then it's gone, right? So we're gonna build all this functionality out. It's gonna be fun. Let's get started with create or get conversation. So we're going to do export const create or get conversation equal, we're gonna do conversation, not conversations. We're going to do a mutation, right? This is going to be a mutation, and the mutation is going to have arguments. These arguments are going to be participant user ID, and the value is going to be string, and it's going to be current user ID, right? So a conversation is going to be happening between two users, and each user is going to have a user ID. So that's where we're going to pass the two arguments, right? Perfect. And then we're going to have our handler function. Our handler function's async, an async operation, and we're going to get the context and the arguments, which is what we need. So first things first, what we're going to do, and I'm just going to copy this code because we've written this code before, is we're going to get both users' convex IDs from their clerk IDs, right? So from the participant user ID and from the current user ID, we're going to get the user's information. So, right, we're going to await context.db query, filter the matching user ID, same thing here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a conditional. If current user or other user does not exist, then simply what we're going to do is we're going to throw new error, and our error message is going to be user not found, right? Because we need both user information. The users must be found. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to check if this conversation already exists, because we don't want to create multiple conversations with the same person, right? It's like if you have like a message chat with someone on your iMessage or your WhatsApp and you search their name again, it's not going to create a separate chat. It's going to continue from the existing chat. So we're going to get the check for the existing conversation first, right? So we're going to await context DB. We're going to query our conversations table. And this is a table we have not made yet. And I will drop the schema in a second. Let me just do this in a new line. We're going to filter, and we're going to take the value. And basically we're going to do a quite nice operation here. We're going to do q.or, and then we're going to check. If you've taken computer science, you know this is all discrete math right here. And let me write this out and I'll explain exactly what it does. So we're going to do q.equal q.field, and we're going to do participant 1, and then we're going to do current user dot underscore ID, and we're just going to copy this and then add a comma here, and then we're going to do participant 2, right? Same thing, and then we're just going to copy from this end right here, right? And then we're just going to comment this out, paste this here, and this is going to be other user, and this is going to be current user, and this is supposed to be other user. All right, so this is going to give us an error until we create the conversations table. And last but not least, we have to make sure we get the first one. So why don't we create the conversations table